The transport shuttle's engines whined as it descended toward the barren surface of Kepler 442b. Inside the cramped prisoner compartment, Dr. Marcus Chen sat quietly, his hands bound with energy shackles that hummed softly against his wrists. The alien guards, tall reptilian creatures called Vorthak, watched him with their golden eyes, occasionally hissing comments in their native tongue that Marcus pretended not to understand. 3 months ago, Marcus had been treating wounded soldiers on the front lines of humanity's first interstellar war. Now he was a prisoner of war, captured during a medical evacuation mission gone wrong. The Vorthak had initially planned to execute him along with the other human captives, but something had stayed their hand. Perhaps it was the way he had treated their wounded alongside his own species during the brief ceasefire negotiations. Perhaps they saw value in keeping a human medical expert alive. The shuttle touched down with a bone-jarring thud. Through the small viewport, Marcus could see the towering obsidian spires of the Vorthak prison complex. This wasn't just any prison. It was Shadow Maw Citadel, a place whispered about in fearful tones even among the Vorthak themselves. The fortress was built into the side of an extinct volcano, its walls carved from volcanic glass that reflected the pale light of the system's twin suns. "Move, human," growled the lead guard in broken English, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. "Your new home awaits." Marcus stood slowly, his joints stiff from the long journey. At 42 years old, he wasn't the youngest prisoner they'd ever taken, but his weathered face and steady hands spoke of decades of experience under pressure. His dark hair was streaked with premature gray, and a long scar ran from his left temple to his jawline, a souvenir from a bombing raid on a field hospital. As they marched him through the fortress gates, Marcus observed everything with the trained eye of a military officer. The walls were 30 feet thick, embedded with sensor arrays and weapon emplacements. Guard towers jutted out at irregular intervals, each one manned by heavily armed Vorthak soldiers. This place was designed to keep something in, not just keep others out. The interior corridors were dimly lit, carved directly from the volcanic rock. Strange bioluminescent fungi provided patches of eerie blue-green light, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The air was thick and humid, carrying the scent of sulfur and something else, something organic and predatory that made the hair on Marcus's neck stand up. They passed cells containing various alien species, all of them looking broken and defeated. Some he recognized from intelligence briefings: Zephyrian merchants, crystalline diplomats, even a few nebula pirates, all enemies of the Vorthak Empire, all sentenced to spend their remaining days in this hellish place. But these weren't their destination. The guards led him deeper into the complex, past areas clearly marked with warning symbols in multiple languages. The temperature began to rise noticeably and the sulfur smell grew stronger. Finally, they stopped before a massive circular chamber carved into the heart of the mountain. "The Council of Scales has decided your fate, human," announced the lead guard, his voice echoing in the vast space. "You have shown mercy to our wounded. This is not understood by many, but it is acknowledged." The chamber was enormous, easily 200 feet across and half as high. The floor was covered in sand and scattered bones, some recognizably alien, others disturbingly humanoid. Ancient scratches marked the walls, deep gouges that could only have been made by something with claws the size of sword blades. "You will not die quickly like the others," the guard continued, unlocking Marcus's shackles. "Instead, you will tend to our greatest weapon. Feed it, heal its wounds, keep it strong for battle. Do this and you may live. Fail." He gestured to the bones scattered around the chamber floor. Marcus rubbed his freed wrists, trying to restore circulation. "What exactly am I supposed to be caring for?" The guard's lipless mouth curved into what might have been a smile. "The Shadow Maw, the last of the ancient void dragons. It has served our empire for 3 centuries, destroying enemy fleets and reducing rebellious worlds to ash. But age and countless battles have taken their toll." A low rumble echoed through the chamber, seeming to come from the walls themselves. Dust drifted down from the ceiling as something massive shifted in the darkness beyond the chamber. Marcus felt his heart rate increase but forced himself to remain calm. He had faced death many times before, in operating rooms, on battlefields, in the vacuum of space when his medical ship had been attacked. "The dragon hasn't eaten in weeks," the guard added, backing toward the exit. "Its wounds refuse to heal properly. Our own healers fear to approach it. Perhaps a human's different perspective. will prove useful. The heavy door began to grind shut, sealing Marcus inside the chamber. As the sound of the guard's footsteps faded, he found himself alone in the dim, oppressive space. The only light came from more of the bioluminescent fungi scattered around the walls, and from a series of thermal vents that glowed like angry eyes in the floor. Marcus walked slowly toward the center of the chamber, his boots crunching on sand and old bones. He had no medical equipment, no supplies, not even a basic first aid kit. Whatever was lurking in the shadows beyond, he would have to face it with nothing but his knowledge and experience. Another rumble shook the chamber, closer this time. The sound of massive claws scraping against stone echoed from the darkness. Then gradually, a shape began to emerge from the shadows at the far end of the chamber. It was enormous, easily the size of a battle cruiser, with scales that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Two glowing red eyes, each larger than Marcus's entire body, fixed on him with ancient intelligence. The Shadow Maw had awakened, and Marcus Chen was about to discover that sometimes the monsters we fear most are not the ones we should be afraid of. The Shadow Maw emerged from the darkness like a nightmare given form. Its massive head alone was the size of a small building, covered in scales that shifted from deep black to dark purple in the fungal light. Ancient scars crisscrossed its hide, telling stories of battles fought across the galaxy. But what struck Marcus most was not the creature's size or fearsome appearance. It was the intelligence burning in those massive red eyes. The dragon moved slowly, each step deliberate and painful. Marcus could see immediately that the creature was suffering. Its left wing dragged slightly, a clear sign of injury, and its breathing was labored. Fresh wounds oozed a luminescent blue fluid across its flank, while older injuries had formed infected craters in its armored hide. "Easy there, big fellow," Marcus said softly, raising his hands in what he hoped was a universal gesture of non-aggression. "I'm not here to hurt you." The dragon's head tilted slightly, studying him with curious intensity. When it spoke, the voice resonated through the chamber like rolling thunder, but the words were clear and precise. "A human," the Shadow Maw rumbled, its mental voice somehow appearing directly in Marcus's mind. "How unexpected. The scaled ones usually feed me Zephyrians or crystallines. Your species is new to me." Marcus tried to hide his surprise. The creature was telepathic, and its mental voice carried an accent he couldn't quite place. Ancient, refined, like an old professor who had seen too much of the universe. "My name is Marcus Chen. I'm a doctor, a healer. The Vorthak want me to tend to your injuries." A sound that might have been laughter rumbled through the dragon's chest. "A healer? How deliciously ironic. Do you know what I am, little human? What I have done in service to these reptilian overlords? I know you're called the Shadow Maw. I know you're supposed to be their ultimate weapon." Marcus took a careful step closer, his medical training overriding his fear. "I also know you're in pain." The dragon's eyes narrowed. "Pain is an old companion. I have carried these wounds for decades. The Vorthak healers refused to approach me after the incident with the last one." "What happened to the last one?" "I ate him." The mental voice was matter-of-fact. "He was incompetent and caused me great agony with his treatments. I warned him twice." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine, but pressed on. "Well, I promise not to be incompetent. May I examine your injuries?" For a long moment, the dragon simply stared at him. Then slowly it lowered its massive head to ground level, bringing one enormous eye close enough to Marcus that he could see his reflection in its depths. "You are either very brave or very foolish, Dr. Marcus Chen. Perhaps both. Yes, you may examine me, but know this. I will not hesitate to end you if you cause unnecessary suffering." Marcus nodded and approached the dragon's flank. Up close, the damage was even worse than he had initially thought. The fresh wounds were clearly infected, the edges black with necrotic tissue. The older scars showed signs of improper healing, creating weak points in the creature's natural armor. But most concerning was a deep gash near the dragon's shoulder joint where the wing connected to the body. "This wing injury," Marcus said, gently probing the area with his fingers. "How long ago did this happen?" "The Battle of the Crimson Nebula, 63 of your human years ago. A Terran Alliance destroyer managed to hit me with a plasma cannon before I could destroy their fleet." Marcus froze. The Battle of the Crimson Nebula was legendary among human military historians, the first major engagement where humanity had faced the Vorthak Empire. According to the records, an entire Terran colony fleet had been wiped out by a single massive creature that had appeared from nowhere, No survivors, no witnesses, just empty ships drifting in space. You destroyed the Harmony colony ships, Marcus said quietly. I did. The dragon's mental voice carried no emotion. 40,000 humans if your records are accurate. Men, women, children, all reduced to atoms by my fire. Marcus felt his hand shake slightly. His own grandfather had been on one of those ships, the agricultural vessel New Eden. For 60 years, his family had wondered what had happened to the colony expedition. And yet, the Shadow Maw continued, you still tend to my wounds. Why? Marcus forced himself to focus on the infected tissue, carefully cleaning away the necrotic material with his bare hands. Because you're suffering and I'm a doctor. It's that simple. Even knowing what I have done to your species, especially knowing what you've done. Marcus looked up into the creature's enormous eye. You said the Vorthak healers won't treat you properly. Why? The dragon was quiet for a moment. Because I am dying, Dr. Chen. These wounds will not heal because my body is beginning to shut down. I am over 400 years old, ancient even by dragon standards. The Vorthak keep me alive through artificial means, forcing me to fight their battles when my time should have ended long ago. As if to emphasize the point, the dragon was seized by a violent coughing fit. Luminescent blood spattered across the chamber floor, steaming where it hit the stone. Marcus could see the pain in those ancient eyes, the weariness that came not just from physical suffering but from centuries of unwilling servitude. The infection in these wounds, Marcus said, continuing his examination, it's not natural. Someone has been deliberately preventing them from healing. The Vorthak medical staff, they keep the wounds open to cause constant pain that drives me to greater fury in battle. A dragon in agony fights with desperate savagery. Marcus felt a wave of disgust wash over him. As a doctor, the deliberate infliction of suffering went against everything he believed in. He had taken an oath to do no harm, to heal rather than hurt. The idea that other medical professionals would deliberately cause pain for tactical advantage was abhorrent. That ends now, he said firmly. I don't care what the Vorthak want. My job is to heal you, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. The Shadow Maw's eye widened slightly. You would defy your captors? I've defied worse. Marcus began working on the smaller wounds, using his knowledge of anatomy and infection control to clean and dress them as best he could without proper supplies. Tell me about your physiology. How does your healing factor work normally? For the next several hours, the dragon patiently explained the complex biology of his species while Marcus worked. Void dragons, it turned out, had remarkable regenerative abilities, but only when they were in a state of mental calm. Stress, pain, and emotional turmoil shut down their natural healing processes almost completely. So the Vorthak have created a perfect cycle, Marcus realized. They keep you in constant pain to make you fight harder. But the pain prevents you from healing, which causes more pain. Precisely. And with each battle, each forced regeneration, my life force grows weaker. Soon even their artificial stimulants will not be enough to rouse me from the long sleep. As the hours passed, Marcus found himself genuinely caring for this ancient creature. Despite the terrible things it had done, he could see that the Shadow Maw was as much a prisoner as he was, perhaps more so. The dragon had been enslaved for centuries, forced to commit atrocities against its will, kept alive only to serve as a weapon of mass destruction. When he finally finished treating the accessible wounds, Marcus stepped back to survey his work. It wasn't much. He had no medicines, no proper tools, just his hands and his knowledge. But the dragon seemed more comfortable already, its breathing less labored. Thank you, Dr. Chen, the Shadow Maw said, its mental voice softer than before. It has been many years since anyone has shown me such kindness. Don't thank me yet, Marcus replied. This is just the beginning. If we're going to get you properly healed, we're going to need supplies, medicines, and a lot more time. And something tells me the Vorthak aren't going to make any of that easy. The dragon's eyes glowed brighter in what might have been amusement. Indeed, they will not. But perhaps, Dr. Chen, it is time someone reminded them that even the most powerful weapons can turn in their wielder's hand. 3 days had passed since Marcus began treating the Shadow Maw, and the dragon's condition had already begun to improve. The simple act of cleaning the wounds and allowing them to heal naturally had done more good than years of Vorthak medical intervention. But Marcus knew this was just the beginning. The real healing would require proper medical supplies and, more importantly, time for the dragon to find peace. The chamber's main door ground open with its characteristic rumble, and Marcus looked up from where he sat beside the dragon's massive head. They had been discussing pre-war Earth literature. Surprisingly, the ancient creature was fascinated by human poetry and philosophy. Commander Siskex entered the chamber, flanked by 2 guards. The Vorthak military leader was larger than most of his species, his scales bearing the deep scarlet coloration that marked him as a veteran warrior. Battle scars crisscrossed his hide, and his left arm had been replaced with a mechanical prosthetic that whirred softly as he moved. Human, Siskex hissed, his yellow eyes fixed on Marcus. The dragon shows improvement. This is acceptable, but progress is slow. The beast must be ready for battle within the week. Marcus stood slowly, positioning himself between the commander and the dragon. Battle? This creature is in no condition to fight. The healing process takes time, and stress will only reverse the progress we've made. Siskex's forked tongue flicked out, tasting the air. Time is a luxury we do not have. The Terran Alliance has launched a counteroffensive. 3 systems have already fallen to their advance. The dragon must destroy their fleet before they reach the core worlds. Behind Marcus, the Shadow Maw stirred. The dragon's mental voice whispered in his mind, carrying centuries of resignation. It matters not, Dr. Chen. I have fought their battles before. I will fight them again until death finally claims me. No, Marcus said firmly, speaking aloud so the Vorthak could hear. I won't allow my patient to be sent into combat in this condition. The wing joint is barely stable. The systemic infection is still present, and the stress of battle could cause a complete physiological collapse. Iskex's eyes narrowed dangerously. You forget your place, human. You are a prisoner, not a physician with privileges. The dragon fights when we command it. Actually, Commander, I think you're forgetting something important. Marcus crossed his arms, meeting the alien's gaze steadily. You brought me here because your own healers couldn't help the dragon. If you want my expertise, you accept my medical judgment. Otherwise, you can go back to watching your ultimate weapon slowly die while your enemies advance. The tension in the chamber was palpable. The guards raised their weapons, the energy cells humming with lethal potential. Siskex took a step forward, his mechanical arm whirring as the claws extended. Then the Shadow Maw raised its massive head, and everyone froze. The ancient dragon's eyes blazed with inner fire, and when it spoke, its voice echoed both telepathically and audibly through the chamber. The human speaks wisdom, Commander. I have served your empire faithfully for 3 centuries. I have burned worlds and shattered fleets at your command. In return, you have kept me in constant agony to fuel your wars. Perhaps it is time for a renegotiation of terms. Skex backed away involuntarily. Despite being the dragon's handler, he clearly feared the creature's power.
You dare threaten the Empire?
We control your life, beast. Without our treatments, you would have died decades ago. The dragon's laugh was like distant thunder. Your treatments? You mean the infections you deliberately maintain? The constant pain you inflict to drive me to fury. Dr. Chen has shown me more healing in 3 days than your healers have provided in 50 years. Marcus felt a surge of satisfaction as he watched the Vorthak commander's confidence waver. He pressed his advantage. Here's what's going to happen, Commander. You're going to provide me with a full medical kit. Surgical tools, antibiotics, pain suppressors, everything I need to properly treat my patient. You're going to give the dragon at least 2 weeks of complete rest to allow the healing process to complete. And you're going to stop interfering with my medical decisions. And if we refuse, Skex snarled, then your ultimate weapon remains crippled and your enemies continue to advance unchecked. Marcus shrugged. Your choice. The standoff lasted for several tense moments. Finally, Siskex spoke in a low, dangerous voice. Very well, human. You will have your supplies and your time, but know this. If the dragon is not ready for battle when needed, both of you will suffer consequences beyond your imagination. After the Vorthak left, Marcus slumped against the dragon's side, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline was wearing off, and he was beginning to realize how dangerous his gambit had been. That was either very clever or very foolish, the Shadow Maw observed. Probably both, but it bought us time, and that's what we need most right now. Marcus looked up at the dragon's enormous eye. You backed me up in there, why? The dragon was quiet for a long moment. In 400 years, Dr. Chen, you are the first being to treat me as something more than a weapon. You see me as a patient, a person worthy of care and healing. That is rare. Everyone deserves medical care regardless of what they've done in the past. Even someone who has killed 40,000 of your people. Marcus was quiet, thinking of his grandfather and the lost colony ships. I won't lie to you. Knowing what you've done hurts. But I've also seen what the Vorthak have done to you. You've been a slave for centuries, forced to commit acts you might never have chosen freely. That doesn't excuse the deaths, but it does explain them. The next morning, as promised, a team of Vorthak technicians arrived with medical supplies. The equipment was alien in design but functional. Surgical tools, biocompatible medications, tissue regenerators, and diagnostic scanners. Marcus set to work immediately, beginning the complex process of properly treating the dragon's injuries. As he worked, they talked. The Shadow Maw told him stories of the ancient days, when dragons roamed freely among the stars, guardians of knowledge and wisdom rather than instruments of war. Marcus shared stories of Earth, of human medicine and philosophy, of the dream that had driven humanity to reach for the stars. Your species is young but shows great promise, the dragon mused as Marcus carefully sutured a deep wound. In many ways you remind me of what dragons once were, curious, compassionate, driven to explore and understand. What happened to change that? Marcus asked. The same thing that always happens, war. The Vorthak Empire expanded across this galaxy like a plague, conquering and enslaving entire species. We dragons tried to stop them, but we were too few and they were too many. One by one we fell. Some died fighting. Others like me were captured and repurposed. Marcus paused in his work. You're the last one, aren't you? The last of the free dragons, yes. There may be others like me, enslaved on distant worlds, but if so, I do not know where. The weight of that revelation settled over Marcus like a heavy blanket. This ancient, magnificent creature wasn't just a prisoner of war. It was the last of its kind, the final survivor of an entire species that had been systematically destroyed or enslaved. The Vorthak made a mistake bringing me here, Marcus said quietly, returning to his work. How so? They thought they were just getting a medic to patch up their weapon. Instead, they've given their ultimate prisoner the one thing he's never had, an ally who actually cares about his well-being. Marcus looked up into the dragon's glowing eyes. And I have an idea about how we might use that to our advantage. The Shadow Maw's expression shifted, ancient intelligence focusing with laser intensity. What kind of idea, Dr. Chen? Marcus smiled grimly. The kind that might just set you free. As the dragon's physical healing progressed over the following days, Marcus began to notice something extraordinary. The Shadow Maw's telepathic abilities were far more extensive than he had initially realized. The ancient creature could sense thoughts and emotions throughout the entire prison complex, monitoring conversations and detecting the movements of guards and prisoners alike. Your mental abilities, Marcus said as he checked the healing progress on the wing joint. They extend beyond this chamber, don't they? The dragon's eye fixed on him with amusement. Perceptive. Yes, Dr. Chen. My consciousness can reach throughout this mountain and beyond. It is how I have survived so long, by knowing my captors' plans before they act upon them. Then you know about the other prisoners. The ones in the upper levels, indeed. 17 species, 43 individuals total. Most have been here for years, broken by torture and despair. But some, the dragon paused thoughtfully, some still retain hope, still plan escape attempts that they believe are secret. Marcus set down his medical scanner. There's a Terran Alliance pilot in Cell Block 7, isn't there? Colonel Sarah Martinez? You know her? By reputation, she was shot down 3 months ago during the same battle where I was captured. Intelligence officer, combat pilot, and according to her file, one of the best tactical minds in the Alliance fleet. The Shadow Maw's mental voice carried a note of intrigue. She has indeed been planning something. Her thoughts are disciplined. Harder to read than most, but I sense schemes within schemes. She believes rescue is possible. Marcus felt a spark of hope kindle in his chest. Could you communicate with her? Without the Vorthak knowing? Dangerous, but possible. The dragon's massive head tilted. What are you thinking, Dr. Chen? Over the next several hours, Marcus outlined his plan. It was audacious, risky, and required perfect timing, but it might be their only chance. The key was the dragon's unique position. The Vorthak depended on their ultimate weapon so completely that they had never considered it might turn against them. That night, while the guards changed shifts, the Shadow Maw extended his consciousness through the prison complex. His mental voice whispered into the dreams of Colonel Martinez, carefully planting thoughts that would seem like her own brilliant realizations. The next morning, Marcus continued his medical work while monitoring the dragon's clandestine communications. The ancient creature was remarkably subtle, never directly telepathic with the prisoners, but instead influencing their thoughts and emotions in ways that felt natural. "The colonel is very intelligent," the Shadow Maw reported. "She has already understood the implications of what I have suggested into her. She is reaching out to other prisoners through their crude communication network." "What network?" "The cleaning duties. Prison labor allows limited movement between cell blocks. Messages pass through scratches on walls, patterns in dust placement, even the rhythm of maintenance work." "Quite ingenious, actually," Marcus smiled. "Humans are good at that, finding ways to communicate under impossible circumstances." "What about the other species? Are any of them potential allies?" The dragon's mental voice grew thoughtful. "The Zephyrian merchants in Block 3 are pragmatic beings. They would join any effort that offers profit or freedom. The crystalline diplomat in solitary confinement possesses significant technical knowledge. Their species built much of the technology the Vorthak now use. And there is a Nebula pirate captain who, despite being half-mad from isolation, still commands respect from the other criminal elements. That's a start, but we need more than prisoners to make this work. We need someone on the inside." "Ah," the dragon's eye gleamed with ancient cunning. "You mean Dr. Kelthera?" Marcus looked up sharply. "Who?" "The Vorthak chief medical officer. She has been observing our progress with great interest. Her thoughts are conflicted. She became a healer to save lives, not to inflict suffering for military advantage. Your methods, your compassionate approach to treatment have awakened doubts she has long suppressed." This was better than Marcus had hoped. "Could you arrange for her to visit? Make it seem like a routine medical inspection?" "Easily done. Commander Siskex is already planning to check on our progress tomorrow. Dr. Kelthera always accompanies such inspections." The next day unfolded exactly as the dragon had predicted. Commander Siskex arrived with his usual escort, plus the chief medical officer, a smaller, more delicate Vorthak with unusual green-tinted scales and intelligent amber eyes. Dr. Kelthera examined the dragon's healing wounds with obvious professional interest. "Remarkable progress," she hissed softly, her voice carrying less of the typical Vorthak aggression. "The infection rates have dropped by 90%. Tissue regeneration is proceeding at optimal rates. How did you achieve this without the standard pain stimulators?" Marcus chose his words carefully. "Simple rest and proper wound care. Sometimes the most effective medicine is allowing the body's natural healing processes to function without interference." Dr. Kelthera's amber eyes met his. For a moment, Marcus saw not an alien captor, but a fellow medical professional struggling with ethical conflicts. "The pain stimulators serve a military function," she said, but her tone suggested uncertainty. "They serve to torture a sentient being for tactical advantage." Marcus replied bluntly. "That's not medicine. That's systematic abuse disguised as treatment," Commander Siskex hissed angrily. "You overstep yourself, human. The dragon is a weapon, not a patient. The dragon," Marcus said, looking directly at Dr. Kelthera, "is a living, thinking being capable of suffering and deserving of compassionate care. Any medical professional who participates in deliberate torture has violated their fundamental oath to heal." The Vorthak doctor's scales rippled with emotion. Marcus had struck home. The ethical conflict was clear in her body language. After the inspection team left, the Shadow Maw's mental voice carried satisfaction. "Well played, Dr. Chen. Dr. Kelthera's thoughts are in turmoil. She will return tonight alone, seeking answers to questions she has long suppressed." True to the dragon's prediction, Dr. Kelthera appeared at the chamber entrance well after the night watch had begun. She entered quietly, her medical equipment bag clutched tightly in her claws. "Dr. Chen," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "I must speak with you." Of course, and Marcus gestured for her to approach. "What's troubling you?" "Everything." The admission seemed to pain her. "I became a healer to save lives, to reduce suffering. But what we have done to this creature, what I have participated in," she looked up at the dragon's massive form. "It is wrong, isn't it? Medically and morally wrong?" Marcus nodded. "Deliberately inflicting pain for tactical advantage is torture, not treatment. The fact that you're questioning it shows you still remember why you became a doctor in the first place." Dr. Kelthera was quiet for a long moment. Then she opened her medical bag and began pulling out supplies. Advanced healing compounds, tissue regenerators, pain blockers. "I cannot undo centuries of wrong," she said quietly, "but I can help heal what has been damaged." The Shadow Maw lowered his massive head to ground level, bringing his eye close to the Vorthak doctor. When he spoke, his voice was gentle, understanding. "Dr. Kelthera, you are not responsible for the sins of your empire, but you have the power to choose a different path, the path of healing rather than harm." The alien doctor's scales shimmered with emotion as she looked into the dragon's ancient, wise eyes. I want to help, but if they discover my involvement, then we make sure they don't," Marcus said firmly. "And in return, maybe you help us with something else, something that could benefit everyone in this prison." Dr. Kelthera's amber eyes widened as Marcus began to explain their plan. By the time he finished, she was trembling, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "It is madness. It will almost certainly mean death for all of us. But it might mean freedom," the Shadow Maw added softly. "Freedom for you, for the prisoners, and for me. After 400 years of slavery, I would rather die free than live another day in chains." Dr. Kelthera closed her eyes, struggling with a decision that would change everything. When she opened them again, her amber gaze held the determination of someone who had found their true purpose. "Tell me what you need." Over the next 5 days, their unlikely conspiracy grew from 3 desperate souls to a carefully orchestrated network spanning the entire prison complex. Dr. Kelthera proved invaluable, using her medical clearance to access restricted areas and communicate with prisoners under the guise of routine health inspections. The Shadow Maw served as their intelligence hub, his telepathic abilities allowing him to monitor Vorthak communications and coordinate between different groups without risking physical contact. Marcus found himself becoming the strategic coordinator, his military medical experience helping him understand both the prisoners' capabilities and the prison's vulnerabilities. Colonel Martinez proved to be everything her reputation suggested. When Dr. Kelthera finally made direct contact under the pretense of treating a minor injury, the Alliance officer immediately grasped the scope of their plan. "The human doctor in the dragon's chamber," she said quietly, as Kelthera tended to a cut on her arm. "He's organizing this, isn't he?" "How did you know?" Martinez smiled grimly. "Because 3 days ago I started having dreams about tactical possibilities I'd never considered before. Someone's been helping me think through the prison's weak points, and there's only one being in this place with that kind of mental reach." Through Kelthera, Marcus learned that Martinez had already identified 17 key prisoners with essential skills. Engineers, pilots, communication specialists, and warriors from a dozen different species. More importantly, she had mapped the prison's daily routines and identified the narrow window when an escape might be possible. "The shift change at 0300 local time," Martinez explained through their relay system. "For exactly 12 minutes, the guard posts are undermanned while the night watch reports to the day commanders. If we could disable the main power grid during that window, the crystalline diplomat Zeltheron provided the technical expertise they needed. The ancient being had helped design the energy systems the Vorthak used throughout their empire, and knew exactly how to create a cascading failure that would look like equipment malfunction rather than sabotage. The fusion reactors powering this facility have a critical flaw," Zeltheron explained to Dr. Kelthera during a fabricated medical consultation. "If the magnetic containment fields are destabilized in the correct sequence, the automatic safety systems will shut down all power to prevent a catastrophic explosion. The backup generators will take at least 20 minutes to fully restore power." 20 minutes. It wasn't much, but it might be enough. The Zephyrian merchants brought something equally valuable: detailed knowledge of the prison's shuttle bays and transport systems. Their leader, Vixtar, had spent months studying the prison's logistics while planning his own escape attempt. 3 functional shuttles in the lower bay, he reported through their communication network. Minimal guard presence during the night shift. The real problem is the orbital defense platforms. They'll shoot down anything that tries to leave without proper authorization codes. That was where the Nebula pirate captain, despite his apparent madness, proved surprisingly useful. Captain Rax had been captured 6 months earlier, but his crew was still operating in the system. More importantly, he knew their communication frequencies and tactical patterns. "My boys are still out there," he cackled during a whispered conversation with Martinez. waiting for old Rax to signal them. They think I'm dead, but they're keeping watch. If we can get a message to them. The pieces were falling into place, but Marcus knew the most dangerous part was still ahead. They had identified their assets, mapped their target, and planned their timing. Now they needed to execute without alerting their captors. Dr. Calthera proved to be surprisingly adept at subtle sabotage. Using her medical clearance, she began positioning modified medical equipment throughout the facility, devices that would serve as communication relays and signal boosters when the time came. I've placed neural resonance amplifiers in 7 strategic locations, she reported during one of her legitimate medical visits to the Dragon's chamber. When activated simultaneously, they'll create a telepathic network spanning the entire complex. The Shadow Maw's eyes glowed with appreciation. Ingenious. With such amplification, I could coordinate our entire force in real time, regardless of physical barriers. But their preparation was complicated by an unexpected development. Commander Suskex arrived for another inspection, this time accompanied by a figure that made everyone freeze, Grand Inquisitor Thix, the Vorthak Empire's chief interrogator and security specialist. The Grand Inquisitor was ancient even by Vorthak standards, his scales bearing the deep black coloration of extreme age. Cybernetic implants covered half his skull, and his remaining organic eye burned with cold intelligence. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone who had broken countless prisoners across a dozen worlds. Commander Suskex informs me that the dragon shows remarkable improvement, Thix hissed, circling Marcus like a predator studying prey. Too remarkable, perhaps. Such rapid healing suggests either incompetence on the part of our previous medical staff or interference with our established protocols. Marcus forced himself to remain calm. I simply applied proper medical techniques. Sometimes the most effective treatment is allowing natural healing processes to function without interference. Indeed. Thix's cybernetic eye focused on him with uncomfortable intensity, and yet our sensors detect unusual neural activity throughout the facility. Prisoners who were previously docile now show elevated brain patterns. Staff members exhibit signs of distraction and conflicted thinking. Most interesting, the Grand Inquisitor moved closer to the dragon's massive head. Tell me, Ancient One, have you been communicating with our other guests? The Shadow Maw's response was perfectly calculated. I'm dying, Inquisitor. My thoughts turn often to the countless battles I have fought, the enemies I have destroyed in service to your empire. Perhaps some telepathic resonance occurs as my consciousness weakens. I am, after all, 400 years old. It was a masterful deflection, using the dragon's age and supposed weakness to explain away the telepathic activity while reinforcing the idea that he remained a loyal weapon. Thix studied the dragon for a long moment, then turned back to Marcus. Dr. Chen, you will accompany me for a private consultation. I have questions about your unconventional treatment methods. Marcus felt his heart rate spike but kept his expression neutral. Of course, Inquisitor. As they left the chamber, the Shadow Maw's mental voice whispered urgently in his mind. Be strong, Dr. Chen. Tell them nothing. We are too close to freedom to fail now. The interrogation chamber was exactly what Marcus had expected. Stark, sterile, and equipped with an array of devices designed to extract information through pain and fear. Thix gestured for him to sit in a chair that immediately sprouted restraints around his wrists and ankles. Dr. Chen, the Inquisitor began, his cybernetic eye whirring as it focused on Marcus's face. You have achieved remarkable results with our dragon. However, certain anomalies suggest that your methods may be having unintended consequences. I'm not sure what you mean. Prisoners throughout this facility have begun exhibiting unusual behavior patterns. Staff loyalty indices have declined by 15%. Most concerning, our pet dragon seems less compliant than before your arrival. Thix activated a neural scanner, its probes extending toward Marcus's temples. This device will allow me to examine your recent memories and determine whether you have been deliberately interfering with our security protocols. Marcus knew that if the neural scanner detected his knowledge of their escape plan, everything would be lost. Dozens of prisoners would face execution, Dr. Calthera would be branded a traitor, and the Shadow Maw would suffer centuries more of torment. But as the scanner's probes touched his skin, something unexpected happened. A voice that was not his own whispered through his consciousness, ancient, powerful, and filled with protective fury. No, the Shadow Maw's mental voice declared. You will not violate his mind. The neural scanner sparked and died as a massive telepathic pulse surged through the chamber. Thick stumbled backward, his cybernetic implants flickering as they struggled to process the psychic feedback. Impossible, the Inquisitor hissed. The dragon cannot project its consciousness beyond its chamber. The containment fields prevent. He was interrupted by alarms beginning to wail throughout the complex. Emergency lights bathed the interrogation chamber in red as automated systems detected the massive psychic disturbance. In the confusion, Marcus felt the restraints on his chair release as their electronic systems were overloaded by the telepathic surge. He stood quickly facing the temporarily disoriented Inquisitor. You made a mistake, Thix, Marcus said quietly. You assumed that healing someone's body wouldn't also heal their spirit. The dragon isn't weaker than before. He's stronger than he's been in centuries. As if to emphasize the point, the mountain itself seemed to shake as something massive moved in the depths below. The Shadow Maw was stirring to full wakefulness, and 400 years of suppressed rage were beginning to surface. The escape plan they had carefully prepared for days was about to be accelerated by necessity. Ready or not, their moment had come. The mountain trembled as 4 centuries of suppressed fury finally found expression. In the depths of Shadow Maw Citadel, the ancient dragon rose to his full height for the first time in decades. The healing Marcus had provided hadn't just restored his body. It had rekindled the fire that had once made dragons the most feared and respected beings in the galaxy. Throughout the prison complex, the neural resonance amplifiers Dr. Kelthera had positioned activated simultaneously. The Shadow Maw's consciousness exploded outward, touching every mind in the facility with a single, overwhelming message: freedom. In the interrogation chamber, Grand Inquisitor Thix clutched his head as psychic feedback overloaded his cybernetic implants. Sparks flew from his neural interfaces as 400 years of accumulated pain and rage crashed through his consciousness like a telepathic tsunami. Impossible, he gasped, ichor streaming from his organic eye. The containment fields, the neural dampeners, were designed to suppress a broken, dying slave, Marcus said, backing toward the chamber door as the facility's alarms wailed around them. Not a dragon who remembers what freedom feels like. The massive blast doors leading to the dragon's chamber exploded outward in a shower of molten metal and volcanic glass. Through the breach came a sound that hadn't been heard in the galaxy for centuries. The full-throated roar of an enraged void dragon. The Shadow Maw emerged from his prison like a force of nature given form. His scales, no longer dulled by pain and despair, blazed with inner fire. His wounds had healed completely, leaving only battle scars that spoke of ancient glory rather than recent suffering. Most dramatically, his massive wings spread wide for the first time in decades, casting the entire chamber in shadow. Guards scattered like leaves before a hurricane as the dragon advanced through the corridor. Energy weapons discharged harmlessly against his armored hide, their power insufficient to penetrate scales that had survived the fires of dying stars. Colonel Martinez's voice crackled through the communication system, her words reaching every conspirator simultaneously through the dragon's telepathic network. All units, execute Phoenix Protocol now. This is not a drill. Throughout the prison complex, their carefully laid plans activated in perfect synchronization. Zelthoron used his crystalline physiology to interface directly with the facility's power grid, inducing the cascading failure he had described. The lights went out as fusion reactors automatically shut down, plunging the complex into emergency lighting. In the shuttle bay, Vixtar and his Zephyrian companions overpowered the minimal guard force with the efficiency of beings who had spent their lives avoiding capture. Their merchant skills proved unexpectedly useful. They knew exactly how to disable security systems and bypass electronic locks. Captain Rax, despite his apparent madness, revealed the cunning that had made him one of the galaxy's most successful pirates. Using components smuggled to him by other prisoners, he activated a concealed transmitter that sent a coded message to his waiting crew. Rax lives. Extract package. Bring Hellfire. But the most crucial element was Dr. Kelthera. Moving through the chaos with medical authority, she reached the central control chamber and used her clearance codes to access the orbital defense grid. Her claws flew over the control interfaces as she uploaded a virus Zelthoron had designed, one that would turn the prison's own weapons against the Vorthak fleet. The Shadowmaw's mental voice reached Marcus as he ran through the corridors toward the shuttle bay. Dr. Chen, the way is clear. Our allies have secured 3 escape routes. But know this, I will not be accompanying you. What? Marcus stumbled to a halt. The whole point was to get you out of here. The point was to give me a choice, and you have done that. I choose to remain and ensure that this facility can never be used to imprison and torture innocent beings again. Through the dragon's telepathic link, Marcus could feel the ancient being's determination. The Shadowmaw wasn't just escaping. He was claiming vengeance for 4 centuries of slavery, for his murdered species, for every atrocity he had been forced to commit. The Vorthak fleet is approaching, the dragon continued. Syskex has called for reinforcements, believing this to be a simple prison riot. They do not yet understand what they face. In the control chamber, Dr. Kelthera's amber eyes widened as her sensors detected the incoming ships. 15 battlecruisers, 3 dreadnoughts, and a flagship carrier. Marcus, if you're going to escape, it has to be now. But even as the words left her mouth, space around the prison complex erupted in violence. Captain Rax's pirate fleet had arrived, their ships emerging from hyperspace in perfect formation. The pirates had assumed their captain was dead, and their fury at the Vorthak Empire had been building for months. This is Captain Slicks of the Nebula Widow. A harsh voice crackled through the communications array. We've come for our captain and anyone else who wants off this rock. Vorthak fleet, you picked the wrong day to mess with pirates. The space battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded history. The Vorthak fleet, expecting to face a few stolen shuttles, instead found themselves caught between the pirates' expert tactical formations and their own orbital defense platforms, which had been turned against them by Zelthorin's virus. But the true terror came when the Shadowmaw finally emerged from the mountain. The ancient dragon burst through the peak of the extinct volcano, his massive form silhouetted against the twin suns. For a moment, he simply hovered there, wings spread wide, a magnificent and terrible sight that sent shockwaves through both fleets. Then he began to hunt. The dragon moved through space with impossible grace, his void-adapted physiology allowing him to survive in the vacuum, while his inner fire provided propulsion. The first Vorthak cruiser died before its crew could even target him, consumed by dragon fire that burned at temperatures exceeding stellar cores. Impossible, Commander Syskex whispered from the bridge of his flagship. The dragon is free? How can it be free? His question was answered when the Shadowmaw's mental voice crashed through every communication channel in the system, carrying 4 centuries of accumulated rage and the authority of an apex predator. I am Shadowmaw, last of the Void Dragons, guardian of the ancient ways. For 400 years you have held me in chains, forced me to serve your empire of conquest and cruelty. No more. Today you face not your weapon, but your judgment. The dragon's assault on the Vorthak fleet was both beautiful and terrifying. He moved like living lightning, striking with precision that came from centuries of forced experience. But now that experience served his own will rather than his captor's commands. In the prison shuttle bay, Marcus watched the battle through the viewport of their escape vessel. Around him, 43 freed prisoners from 17 different species worked together with the efficiency of beings who had found hope in the darkest place. Dr. Chen, Colonel Martinez called from the pilot's seat. We need to go. The pirates are holding a corridor open for us, but it won't last long. Marcus nodded, but his eyes remained fixed on the dragon's form as it danced through space, finally free after so many centuries. He had come to this place as a prisoner, expecting only to treat wounds and maybe ease suffering. Instead, he had helped awaken something magnificent and terrible, a force of nature that would reshape the balance of power in this sector of the galaxy. Thank you. The Shadowmaw's mental voice whispered one last time as their shuttle accelerated toward freedom, for giving me back my choice, for reminding me what it means to be healed rather than simply kept alive. As they reached the safety of the pirate fleet, Marcus looked back one final time. The Shadowmaw Citadel was burning, its centuries of dark purpose finally ended, and above it all a dragon soared free among the stars, carrying with him the last hope of a species that refused to be forgotten. The legend of the Shadowmaw was ending, but the legend of the last free dragon was just beginning. 6 months after the destruction of Shadowmaw Citadel, Dr. Marcus Chen stood on the observation deck of the Alliance medical station orbiting Kepler 442b. The planet below bore the scars of that fateful day, a crater where the prison complex had once stood, surrounded by fields of crystallized sand, where dragonfire had touched the surface. The rescue had been successful beyond their wildest dreams. All 43 prisoners had survived the escape, along with Dr. Kelthera and, surprisingly, 17 other Vorthak personnel who had chosen freedom over empire. The pirate fleet had evacuated everyone safely, though the cost had been terrible. Of the Vorthak battle group that had responded to the prison break, only 3 ships had survived. The rest lay as twisted wreckage in the system's asteroid belt, testament to the fury of an ancient dragon finally unchained. Commander Siaskex himself had perished when the Shadowmaw had torn his flagship apart with claws that could rend starship hulls like paper. But the victory had come with an unexpected price. The dragon that Marcus had helped heal was gone. The hyperspace readings were conclusive, Colonel Martinez said, joining him at the viewport. She wore the uniform of the Alliance Intelligence Corps now, her promotion earned through the intelligence gathered during their escape. Massive displacement signature, heading toward the galactic core. He's looking for others of his kind. Marcus nodded, his expression thoughtful. He told me once that he might not be the last, that there could be other dragons enslaved on distant worlds. If anyone could find them, it's him. Martinez finished the thought. The question is, what happens when he does? That question was being debated in council chambers across the galaxy. The escape from Shadowmaw Citadel had done more than free a few dozen prisoners. It had shattered the myth of Vorthak invincibility. Word of the dragon's freedom had spread like wildfire through the underground networks of enslaved species, sparking rebellions from the Outer Rim to the Empire's core worlds. Dr. Kelthera entered the observation lounge, carrying a datapad filled with the day's reports. The former Vorthak medical officer had found a new purpose working with the Alliance's xenobiology department, her inside knowledge of Empire medical practices proving invaluable for treating refugees and former prisoners. The latest intelligence reports, she said, her scales showing the green tint that indicated contentment among her species. 3 more prison complexes have fallen in the past week. The rebels aren't just fighting now. They're winning. Marcus took the pad and scanned the reports. The names read like a catalog of liberation: Fortress Grimhold, the Pit of Sorrows, the Screaming Moons. Each one a notorious Vorthak prison where the Empire's enemies had been sent to die slowly. Each one now either destroyed or in rebel hands. The Shadowmaw's influence, Kelthera continued. His escape has become a symbol of hope throughout the galaxy. But more than that, there are reports of actual dragon sightings. Ships matching his energy signature have been detected in at least 7 systems. He's building something, Marcus realized, not just looking for survivors, organizing them. The implications were staggering. A single dragon had been the Vorthak Empire's ultimate weapon for 3 centuries. What could a coordinated group of free dragons accomplish? They got their answer 3 weeks later. The attack on the Vorthak capital world was swift, surgical, and absolutely devastating. 7 dragons, ancient beings who had been enslaved for centuries, emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation above the Empire's seat of power. They moved with the coordination of creatures who had fought together for millennia, their combined assault reducing the planet's orbital defenses to scrap metal in minutes. But this wasn't genocide. The dragons had learned from their own suffering, and their assault was precisely targeted. Military installations, government buildings, the palace of the Vorthak Emperor, all destroyed with clinical precision. Civilian areas were carefully avoided, though the dragon's mere presence sent millions of Vorthak citizens fleeing in terror. The message was clear. The age of the Vorthak Empire was ending. Marcus watched the footage on the station's main screen, recognizing the distinctive silhouette of the Shadowmaw leading the formation. The dragon he had helped heal was now the general of an army of liberated legends, each one carrying centuries of accumulated rage and the wisdom to use it wisely. Incoming transmission, the communications officer announced. Source unknown, but the quantum signature matches known dragon energy patterns. The main screen flickered, then resolved into an image that took Marcus's breath away. The Shadowmaw's massive head filled the display, but the ancient dragon looked different now. His scales gleamed with inner fire. His eyes burned with purpose rather than pain. And there was something else, a sense of completion, of destiny finally fulfilled. Dr. Marcus Chen. The dragon's familiar mental voice resonated through the station's communication system. I wanted you to witness this moment, to see what your compassion has wrought." Behind the dragon, Marcus could see others of his kind, beings of immense power and ancient wisdom who had finally reclaimed their freedom. Some bore the scars of centuries of slavery, while others showed signs of recent liberation. All of them looked to the Shadow Maw with respect and trust. "The empire that enslaved us is broken," the dragon continued. "But we do not seek to replace one tyranny with another. We have chosen a different path. The path of guardianship you helped me remember." Images flashed across the screen. Refugee ships being escorted to safety by dragon escorts, former prison worlds being transformed into sanctuaries, Vorthak civilians being protected from the chaos of their empire's collapse. "You taught me that healing is about more than mending wounds," the Shadow Maw said, his ancient eyes fixed on Marcus through the screen. "It is about restoring hope, rebuilding trust, creating something better from the ashes of what was broken." Marcus felt tears streaming down his face as he watched history unfold. The scared, wounded creature he had treated in that volcanic chamber had become something magnificent. Not just a weapon of destruction, but a force for healing on a galactic scale. "The dragons withdraw from the affairs of younger species," the Shadow Maw announced. "We return to our ancient role as guardians of knowledge and protectors of the innocent. But we will remember those who showed us kindness in our darkest hour." The transmission began to fade, but the dragon's final words came through clearly. "Thank you, Dr. Chen, for reminding us what we were meant to be." As the screen went dark, Marcus found himself surrounded by the former prisoners he had helped rescue. Colonel Martinez placed a hand on his shoulder, while Dr. Kelthera's scales showed the deep blue of profound respect. "You did that," Martinez said quietly. "One human combat medic, treating his patient with dignity and compassion. You changed the course of galactic history." Marcus shook his head, looking out at the stars where dragons once again flew free. "I just did my job. I saw someone suffering and tried to help." "Exactly," Dr. Kelthera said, her amber eyes bright with understanding. "You showed us that sometimes the most powerful weapon in the universe is simple kindness. That healing can be more transformative than any amount of force." In the months that followed, the galaxy slowly began to heal from centuries of Vorthak oppression. The Empire fragmented into smaller, more manageable states, while former prison worlds became centers of learning and culture. The dragons kept their word, remaining guardians rather than rulers, but their presence ensured that no one species could again dominate all others. And in a medical station orbiting a distant world, Dr. Marcus Chen continued his work, treating patients, training new doctors, and teaching the lesson he had learned in the depths of a volcanic prison: that every being, no matter how frightening or powerful, deserves compassion and the chance to heal. Sometimes, when he looked up at the stars, he would see a distant glint of light that moved too purposefully to be a ship or satellite. In those moments, he would smile and whisper a quiet thanks to an old patient who had taught him that the greatest victories are often won not with weapons, but with the simple decision to see the person behind the monster. The legend of the human combat medic who freed the last dragon had become one of the most told stories in the galaxy. But for Marcus Chen, it would always be something simpler: the day he remembered why he had become a doctor in the first place.